I solemnly swear I'm up to no good.
Hey everybody, welcome back to 2 Hours on a Sunday. I'm Nick.
And I'm Brian, and today we have all received our letters of acceptance to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. But before we can enter the school, we must portkey our way to Diagon Alley, where we must pick up two fellow witches. And those witches are Adria and Dayna.
Woo! Hey, that's me!
And like all students who get their first letter to Hogwarts, we go to Diagon Alley to gather all of our supplies. So I want to ask you both, what was your first introduction to Harry Potter?
Oh, well, my introduction is going to be very similar to Dayna's. But we were first introduced to Harry Potter by our very dramatic third grade teacher who had a background in theater. And he would do a kind of story time where he'd pick a book and he would read us the story chapter by chapter. But because he had this theater background, he would do these very dramatic voices. And he started with Harry Potter, the first Harry Potter. And we all were like instantly obsessed. So he did Harry Potter and he did A Series of Unfortunate Events. And I'm sure Dayna's story will be very similar, but instantly I was like obsessed. I think it was like right before recess or the end of the day or something. And we would like be like, oh my God, I can't wait to go back and find out what happened. And and so he, I think, read us the first book and the second book, but I'm not sure if we finished the second one. But yeah, it was just, we were instantly hooked. And it was like, I think, the reason that I still love reading to this day. So pretty impactful.
That was a great summary, Adria.
Thank you.
I guess the only thing I can add to that is I think when it came out, I forget what time the books originally came out. But I do remember the other second grade class being like, oh, we read that one last year. And I think our grandma got us the first three books probably after this, probably the Christmas following. And I think that's all that was out at the time. We continued to read the like second one and the third one, I think. It was like the first chapter books that I'd ever read fully by myself. And I even remember like our cousin reading it to us because she was reading it too. I think probably the third one, like a couple chapters on a sleepover. So definitely, like Adria said, all of our core memories for reading, and probably, like she said, the only reason that we continued to read to this day.
My introduction to Harry Potter was definitely not that extravagant, but I'm glad you guys had that experience.
That definitely would start some people off on a very high note.
Absolutely. When I was growing up, my mom would always read to me, and then once I got a little older and started wanting to read, I would like read with her or to her. And I think when the books first came out, she just got them. She was like, I don't know, new kids chapter book, perfect time. And I started reading it with her. Instantly, it was just captivating for like from the very first chapter. And I remember wanting to go back and read the previous chapter again, just to do it, like just to reinforce it in your brain. And then I think once we got to Prisoner of Azkaban or Goblet of Fire, that was at the point where I was already just independently reading them. And I told her, like, catch up. Because I was just at like before bed every night, I would read and nonstop. So I was always just telling her to catch up because I was already 2 or 3 chapters ahead. And it kept going until the very end of the series. So it was just that initial draw that brought me in, and I could not pull away from it. Brian, what about you? I don't know your intro to Harry Potter. I always thought it was the movies, but I might be totally wrong.
So here's the thing. Growing up, I was not an avid reader. I was very much an outdoors kid running around, and the thought of sitting in a chair or on a couch reading a book just didn't do it for me. So, but my first experience was not the movie. And my grandma got me a book for, I think it was my birthday. and it's the very first Harry Potter book, but it's one without any
So
covering,
cool.
and it's
Oh.
the Sorcerer's Stone.
Oh.
So I believe this is the state's
Yes.
version, right?
Yeah.
Because ours is the Philosopher's. And on the inside, she has it dated.
Cool.
That's awesome.
It's dated March 8th, 2002. So indeed, it is my birthday.
Yeah.
Aw.
That's so cool.
And it says, "Happy birthday, Brian. Enjoy your book. All the love, Grandma and Grandpa."
That's so nice.
And I'm going to be real with you. I don't believe I read it right away. I eventually did, Coming to, but I think it was after the first movie. So I do think the first movies, I'm more of a movie person than a book person, but I did read most of the books throughout my life, and those were kind of the only books I ever read.
Yeah.
But the movie was my first kind of experience to Harry Potter.
Honestly, I think those books, if any books, are the ones to read. If you know
100%.
people who are like not really into reading, give them your paperback copy, or there's tons at the thrift store. Go buy one and go give it to that friend. I think it gets most people into them right away.
What I find cool is not cool, strange, is that the books are all different sizes depending on which generation print it is. Because
Yes.
like the first two books for
They're
like
skinny.
American or Canada, they're very thin. It looks like they're like 100 pages. So that's definitely something to get somebody into reading. It's like, oh yeah, it's not that long. You can really dive in.
Just wait till number 4.
Don't worry about book 4 or 5. Because just like myself, when book 5 came out, I'm like, there's no way I'm sitting down to read this. It's 1,000 pages. But even this one's a little bit thicker. But like this is still a decent read. But yeah, book 5, I was like, no chance. I'm skipping it immediately. And I never read it.
Oh my god.
It tricks you into it. It lulls you into being like, yeah, this is something I could do. And that's so true. Like, we had such different childhoods because Dayna and I were like, the opposite of going outside. We didn't want to be outside. We only wanted to be inside and read and watch TV.
We also had a mandatory hour of reading before bed on on weekdays.
Yeah.
I love it.
See, I was still playing basketball at 9 p.m.
Yeah.
So
You're busy.
I came in, just showered and go to bed. But it's funny because I was gifted my first book, but by the time the last book came out, I was there opening day at Indigo Books trying to grab it. I wasn't
Cool.
ever a midnight release person, but before we go to the next question, I just want to say thank you for the books, but we'll take it from here. Little disclaimer. So going into the next part, did you ever go to a midnight release for a book or the movies?
Yes, Dayna and I were avid midnight release. I don't know which book it was that we started to do this, but our Nona, she always would like take us to events at the mall. And I think Nona is the one who found out about it. But Dayna and I loved going to chapters. And I want to say it was like maybe for the 5th book that we went for, the 4th or 5th, something like that, in like 4th or 5th grade. And yeah, so it was this so cool because outside of the movies, there wasn't all the hubbub of Harry Potter quite yet, like in society, I would say, in stores. And so at least from our experience, I remember there was a band playing Harry Potter themed music. There was like treats. There was like a scavenger hunt at chapters. And the only thing was like Dayna and I would go there and our poor little Nona would wait like hours till midnight. She'd find a chair. And then Dayna and I would be like, okay, we'll come back and get our book in the morning because you'd have to wait like another hour after midnight to get your book. But it was so fun and magical.
And she went back and got it for us. She let us sleep in.
So you made her stay up all night just for her to go back to get it for you?
The sweetest.
We were spoiled rotten, but it was like so, right, Dayna? Because you didn't, at the time, it wasn't like it is now where like everybody, there was like Harry Potter all over. Like Dayna and I have talked a lot about like, even when we were kids, like if you missed an episode of TV, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to see it again. And that is kind of how it felt at the time with like merchandise and stuff like that, because it wasn't as big as it was. So Yeah, the midnight releases were where it's at. Dayna and I were at the movie midnight releases. It was like the same experience across the board. It was so good. But we were so shy, so we didn't really talk to anyone. But it was so fun.
You were standing there in your invisibility cloak and you're like, don't look at me.
Yeah, don't look at me, but I'm loving it.
How has that experience changed for you? Like going when you were very young to when maybe in the later movies, were you talking to people in line waiting to get in like to the movies? Because I remember, I think it was for the last two movies I don't think we went to the first day opening, but we went like the next day and it was still like huge lines. But we would just like talk to everybody and be like, how do you think they're going to be different from the books? Like, what was your experience waiting in line?
I remember, like, definitely with the last one, we went with, like, our nerdy group. We went with, like, 10 of us, I think. And I remember our friends, thanks, Matt, he stood in line for us because we were late. And we got to, like, cut to where we were. And I do remember it being a huge, especially for the last movie, like, a huge line around the movie theater. And I remember the buzz. Everybody was talking. I remember there were like people that had made like Harry Potter cupcakes and stuff like that in line.
We brought cupcakes. That was us.
No, we didn't.
Yes.
I don't remember that.
I'm pretty sure we brought them and then we ate them in line and gave them to people because we were like, oh, we're late. I'm sorry, but have this cupcake. I'm pretty sure we made the cupcakes.
I didn't remember that at all, but that checks out.
If you guys didn't make the cupcakes, you would have been on time.
That's
true. That's true. I think definitely. And that's when, and like the last movie came out when I think we were in grade 11 or 12. So I feel like Adria and I had hit our stride at that point. We were chatty Cathys. And so definitely chatting around then, but still, I would say the exact same level of excitement for us.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think we went from, I think everybody kind of goes through a little bit of like highs and lows of like, oh, am I embarrassed that I'm this big of a fan? And Dayna and I were kind of like, it was quieter being a fan, I would say, as you're just reading the books, but then obviously we hit high school and Dayna and I are like, nope, this is our personality. Every book we've ever loved. We've got the posters. That was literally all Dayna and I ever asked for Christmas was Harry Potter merch, then Twilight, then Hunger Games and everything. So yeah, definitely we were, I would say, on the more extreme level of the fans. And it was just that level of excitement just shot up as we went.
Which I think is totally reasonable. There's nothing wrong with just skyrocketing your fandom, especially for things like Harry Potter. Like it's so worldwide and known now that it's like don't hide it, enjoy it.
Well, sometimes you have to hide it now,
due
to my statement earlier.
Yeah, I suppose.
But I don't remember going. I went to all the movies. But I only remember two of them. I don't remember going to the final two, even though I was there. Like I remember going to Half-Blood Prince with my cousin Ashley. We went to opening night, I believe. And back when you didn't have reserved seating and you had to stand in a long line,
the stress.
The times to be alive now. But like we had like low seats. You had to sit at the bottom kind of thing. But the other movie I only remember going is because of how traumatizing it was for my sister was Prisoner of Azkaban. Because she is 3 years younger than me. But when Prisoner of Azkaban came out, we were like 10 and 7. And so when the Dementor showed up, she was done. I don't know how we even made it through the whole movie. She was on my mom's lap just crying. But yeah, I don't remember going to the final two movies or standing in a line. So it must have been either the day or then like 2 days later or something. Yeah. But I do remember being in the theater for them, but not standing in a long line. Because I'm the total opposite of both of you, where my fandom is internalized, and I don't really like to. I was very shy, so my excitement levels never showed on the outside. I was more internal. Like I would like get all nervous and like I would have the sweaty hands and like be all excited, but I wouldn't be like dressed up in like gowns with a wand and being like, oh, I'm here for the movie kind of thing. So that was my kind of experience with my fandom. I think
what movie it was you. Me, Jesse, and Ian. I think we went to go see a movie, and you were like, "Yeah, Jesse is like so excited for this movie. And he was just like sitting there.
Me? I was just sitting there?
No, Jesse was.
Oh.
And I was like, are you excited? He's like, I've been waiting for this for months.
I've never been more excited in my life.
Oh, it was probably one of the Avenger movies. We went
I think
went
it
for
was
dinner first when you guys ate the hot wings.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, because that was one of our midnight releases were the Avenger movies.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Speaking of midnight release, I just wanted to show my glasses from the midnight release, the 3D glasses that they gave you.
I
Were
have
any of
mine
the
too.
movies in 3D?
I think they must be, right?
The last one was.
The last
one.
Yes. So we got them. This is when our dad got us the early tickets, which I don't even know how you did that before, like the internet tickets. But anyways, he got like 12 tickets for us. and yeah, and you got these glasses if you were there at the midnight release. And fun fact, my boyfriend at the time came with us and he ended up getting sick like right before the movie was going to start, and I looked at him. I said, all right, I'll see you later because I'm not leaving. So he ended up, my dad came back and drove him home. And I said, okay, see ya. Like, there's not a chance I'm leaving.
And that was the last time Adria saw him.
There we go.
Adria, you were like, it all ends here. So
Yeah.
I'm sorry. You're going home and I'm staying.
Exactly.
I think Harry Potter, that poster for the final movie where it says it all ends here.
Uh,
That
Yeah.
poster, Harry Potter was so huge at the time. You didn't even need titles on posters anymore. You just had Harry standing there with Ron and Hermione and then whatever undercard it was. And everybody knew
Yeah.
with a date. It was like, okay, I'm already there. You don't even need to give me the poster. I'm in line.
I remember when I saw it, I got chills. I just got chills you talking about it, to be honest. I think it was ginormous too. Like the one, it was in New York or something like
Yeah.
that.
Mhm.
Oh, so cool.
Nick, what was yours?
I think my first midnight book release, was The Goblet of Fire. I think that was the first and only one I ever did. I don't like staying up that late. And
And you're like, it's coming out. It'll be there the next day.
yeah, exactly.
That's
I'm not
true.
going to get the first editions anyways. I'm not worried about it. But I really, looking back at it, I really do miss the idea of standing in line for either the movie or a book release. It was a way to bring a community together a little bit more. Where now, you can order it online, you can pre-order it. Scrambling for a seat at a movie theater, I think, is a little different.
Nobody likes that.
No,
If you're
nobody
not
does.
first in line, good luck.
Exactly. I think I would appreciate still having a get in line, but already have your seats pre-ordered.
mhm.
Like today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And or even if they have a little bit of an incentive, come in and you get the glasses or something. You get some little piece of merchandise or just to say you were there early and you got to wait in line and hang out with everybody.
I think that's a great idea because people need to go back to the theater. So I feel like giving out incentives to be like, oh my God, you were there the first weekend. You
Exactly.
got a gift
Yeah.
or some kind of piece of merch to say, oh my God, I was part of the crew who were there opening night or that opening weekend would really bring the theaters back in a way. Kind of like how Barbie and Oppenheimer
Yes.
had that era.
An event.
Yes.
And
And it
making
wasn't
an event again.
Yeah, and it wasn't necessarily the movie being the event. It's the idea around the movie, the people putting it together, or the people that want this thing to happen. And it's the fans, right? Barbenheimer wouldn't have happened if execs weren't put them out on the same day and people were just double feature and just making it huge. Yeah, I think that would be so cool because for the longest time, I don't think I liked going to the movies. It was just I'll watch it at home. But you got me back into going to the movies, Brian, because you're just yeah, we're going to see I don't know, Jurassic World 2 in the movie theater. What? He's yeah, it's the experience. I'm okay. And then,
Well, because I wasn't a huge movie theater person either. I saw them, but not opening weekend. My first opening weekend was you telling me you had tickets to the first Avengers.
yeah.
And you're like, oh my God. He's like, there's a couple seats up. I'm like, okay, I guess I'll get tickets. We weren't in the same row, but that was my first time. Why haven't I been doing this for my whole life?
Brian experienced that, and he's like, every movie I see will be this experience from then
Yes.
on. Because
Especially nowadays.
if you know Brian, you're like, that's happened to me too. I went to the movies, but I didn't go all the time, and now we saw every single movie coming out.
I feel like that was when you guys started dating. So now I realize this is Nick's fault. Every movie, you guys, that was like your date night. I feel
Listen,
like
it is.
multiple times in the summer. Oh my god, you guys were like,
We're keeping Cineplex alive.
We are. I would see movies multiple times. I would go see it with Adria, and then like I'd call Nick. I'd be like, "Yo, we have to go see this movie." He's like, "You saw it?" I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to see it again." He's like, "Okay, 2 days from now, we got tickets." I'm like, my thing is, I made people go to the movies with me because I would buy all the tickets.
Exactly.
So you would have
It's
to
the
go
easiest
because
thing.
I was the one in charge. If anyone else was in charge, we wouldn't go.
Right. It's true. Yeah. We just give you the money when we see you.
Yeah, it was a Black Ops deal.
Yeah.
They just slid me the 20,
Yep.
underneath the seat.
Yeah.
Talking about the books and the movies, are your favorite books the same as your favorite movie? If not, what made the movie less than the book for you?
My favorite book growing up and my favorite movie were both the same. And it was The Prisoner of Azkaban. And something about the shift being the third book, third movie, it's you get a little bit of the aging maturity, kind of the teenage angst mixed with the still kind of youthful magical realm. And we get introduced to two of my favorite characters, Sirius and Lupin, which let me tell you, Lupin can get it. He is.
whoa.
I just watched Prisoner of Azkaban yesterday, and my love for him was still there. Dayna and I have lots of crushes as far as characters go, but we'll get into that later. But that was one of my main ones, and I saw him and I was like, this moody werewolf guy.
Mysterious.
Yes, he's so anyways. So as far as comparing the books and the movies, I think the third one was the first one that I actually read all the way through because like I said, we had our teacher who read to us. So this was like the first one I think I fully read myself. And comparing the two, there's always throughout all of the books, like I think things missing. I think the third one is very close to the book, if I'm remembering correctly. It's been quite a long time. But as far as those go, really, really successful. My only main complaint, even though it is my favorite book and movie, but we watched it yesterday and there's one unforgivable moment in this movie, and it is the final shot of Harry where he's flying on and we get the still frame of his face.
I'm like, why didn't he just have him go by frame and just cut to black?
Yep.
It was, now let me say, I know, I agree. Watching them right after we watched Chamber of Secrets was a little jarring. So I can see why there's a little bit of blowback about that movie, because it does take a jump into like the blue Twilight look of things.
It is a different director as
Yes,
well, is it not?
This is the first two were by Chris Columbus, and then this one was by a guy I don't remember his name.
Alfonso
Oh.
Cuarón.
Alfonso.
Yes.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I really, really liked it, but upon rewatch, I don't know if it's my favorite movie anymore. I still love the story, but since we just watched it yesterday, I feel like I might pick a new favorite. I don't know. I still loved it, but it's got some guilts.
I think originally I used to always say, I'll start this with, I am not a rereader. I am like, there are too many books in the world and I need to like get this down because I'm a slow reader. And so I have only ever reread The Half-Blood Prince 3 times. But that being said, I think that Order of the Phoenix is what I've always said was my favorite book. And I don't really know if I can pin down exactly why that is. I think it's just so different and probably not at all where I was expecting the storyline to go, with obviously the people in the order, seeing so much more interaction with the adults and everything like that. The prophecy, I think, is that.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, the prophecy. I think that's why. Now I'm starting to remember. I remember the prophecy a lot and all of that. And I think there's a lot that happened. Obviously, this is like This one's the longest one, right?
I think
Yeah.
so. Yeah.
Yet they split the last movie into two.
Yeah.
And so I would say that one was always my favorite book. But upon rewatch, I think the funnest rewatch is Goblet of Fire.
I will say Order of the Phoenix, since we just watched it yesterday, blew me away. I feel like I haven't watched it in forever. The one thing I do remember, Dayna, about you reading Order of the Phoenix, Dayna loves Hermione, and Order of the Phoenix has this whole subplot. I feel like Order of the Phoenix is the one that they took out the most for the movie, because there's the whole subplot about Hermione fighting for the justice of the house elves. She creates this thing called Spew, yes. And this culminates in the last book when Ron and Hermione kiss, and the reason they kiss is because Ron says something where he's like supportive. He like helped a house elf, or says something about a house elf.
I think he says, "Oh, but did we? He in the book? I think he saves like he's like, oh, don't worry, like I got it. I saved them or something like that," and then they smooch.
And it's the reason they kiss, and those are Dayna's two favorite couple in the book, and I think that's one of the main reasons why you love that book so much.
I love both of your choices because they're so different. But and Dayna, I agree with you. I'm such a slow reader. I don't reread books, just like I don't really rewatch movies, except for like Harry Potter and a couple other series. Order of the Phoenix, I think, is one of my favorite movies from the series because of how they deal with the awkwardness of teenagers or teenagerdom. It is so awkward. Like looking at it as a 30-year-old, I'm like, oh, that's how we were. Like if I get that feeling, that unease, then I know it's done well. And that I think is one of my reasons why it's like up there for me. I love the first two movies. I think they're adorable. They're fun. They're goofy. The kids are so cute. 3 is my favorite movie because it is a standalone movie to me. I could watch it at any time. And it's like, it's directed well. The story is cohesive. Everybody's on point with their acting. This is where the kids start to get like, out of that kid actor phase. And then, Lupin, right? I can't argue with that one. He's up there.
We got to the train part where he's covered in a blanket, and I was like, he's so cool.
He's so cool.
You can't even see him yet. I'm like, he's so cool.
Exactly. Now, in terms of books, that one's hard for me. I have been rereading them very slowly, but I have the original hardcovers from like the Scholastic ones, but I've been buying the full illustrated editions, like the big honkin' ones.
They're so cool.
We have a couple of those.
They're amazing. I love them. I'm on Order of the Phoenix right now, and I still think Philosopher's Stone is like my favorite one because it's so small and it's like it's digestible. Like I can read it in a couple days, even though I'm super slow and I might fall asleep while I'm reading. But it just has that like cohesive tightness of the story. It's like, it's like it could be a one and done kind of thing. And just the way that the author describes each of the characters, introduces them one by one in such a natural way, you instantly have an image of them. For me, I'm visual when I'm reading. Like I think about it visually. So if I've got a good description of the character, then I'm good. I'm very invested, even if it is just describing them as a character visually. So yeah, I'd say number 1 is my favorite book, and number 3 is my favorite movie, but number 5 is up there. It's tied with 1 and 2 for very different reasons.
So many good points.
Brian?
Nick, were you, when we were talking about the Harry Potter movies back in the day, was Goblet of Fire, because you mentioned points about Goblet of Fire at the ending where it was so different in the book.
Yes.
And they missed a bunch of stuff. So do you think that hurt your experience with Goblet of Fire, having some of those key elements in the book not in the movie?
Yes. Yeah. I feel like now looking back on how long has the movie been out for? Like 10, 15 years,
At
like
least,
a long time.
12 something.
It
Yeah.
was like 2006.
At this point, it's like, I don't care. It like, I agree with Dana. It's actually like a fun movie. It's
Yeah,
weird.
2005.
2005. There we go. So for
That's almost 20 years ago.
yeah, for me, knowing that the director never read the book kind of soured it for me. He's just like, we don't need that. Cut it out. And like the whole final task in the maze, we don't get the Sphinx, we don't get the blast-ended Scroots, we don't get the riddle with the spider, we don't get any of that stuff, and it's just kind of like the isolationism of the maze. That part is done well. I think it could have done a little bit more to really solidify that competitiveness between Harry and Cedric. Going beyond that, it's still a fun movie. I like it now. I actually didn't like it because I read the book before, and I was like, how are they going to do the mermaid scene? They did it well, especially for 2005.
Terrifying. The mermaids are so scary.
Yeah. I think it was done really, really well, because back then, I don't know, full underwater scenes were unheard of. Mm-hmm. I was like, this is going to look like poo, and I'm not going to like it. And then I liked that, but I don't think I liked the movie overall because it was missing things. But now I don't care. I think it's good.
See, I'm the opposite. I had read that book after the movie. And to be honest, I only really remember reading 2 of them, even though I read all of them except for Order of the Phoenix. But Goblet of Fire, I only remember pieces of, but that is my favorite movie.
Yeah.
And Half-Blood Prince is the one I remember reading the most, and I was disappointed with the ending of Half-Blood Prince. Even though I enjoy Half-Blood Prince, they're missing a lot of the war that happened in Half-Blood Prince, if I'm remembering correctly, at the end with Hagrid's hut.
Hagrid, yeah.
So I think they missed, because I think they pushed that to the last 2 movies, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yes, I think they did.
Because all the creatures and stuff were fighting in Half-Blood Prince at Hagrid's hut on fire, and all the wizards and witches were there. Whereas they didn't want to do that.
Is that not in the last book?
On the
no, Half-Blood Prince, after Snape kills
Spoilers.
Spoilers. He trusted you. He trusted you.
You're right. Sorry.
So I think that's the only book I remember reading, and the ending was like, wow, that was so cool to read. And then not seeing it, I think that really kind of hurt that. But there was a point, Adria and I watched Half-Blood Prince yesterday, and I think I forget a lot what happens in the later movies because I only read the books when I was young, and I only read them once. But I'm like, isn't Half-Blood Prince the part where they infiltrate the ministry, and they take the Polyjuice potion, and it takes forever to get anything done? And I'm just like, and she's like, oh no, that's not it. He makes the order, and they do. I'm like, then why am I thinking that's the movie? We watched Order of the Phoenix yesterday. That movie was incredible. That's definitely, because I always thought Prisoner of Azkaban was 1 or 2, but now I think Prisoner of Azkaban has to drop down to at least 3, because Order of the Phoenix, it's all the way through, I'm like, this movie's incredible.
Yeah.
Every single scene hit. The building of the order, the Dumbledore versus Voldemort duel at the end.
With the glass.
I don't know what they did. I think that hurt the rest of the movies the most, because
that was
they were so inventive and creative, and it was such a spectacle seeing those 2 wizards go head to head. And the rest of the films we'll get into later, but it's so dull in comparison. All the spells are just white.
Yeah.
They're shooting off the stupefies left and right, but there's no color whatsoever.
No.
And I think when going towards, we'll talk about it at the end, Harry and Voldemort's compared to Dumbledore and Voldemort's, they're not even close. But I definitely think Goblet of Fire, not only because dragons are one of my favorite fictional creatures, but because the Hungarian Horntail chase with Harry, Quidditch is one of my favorite things in Harry Potter. And I think the one thing that hurts that it wasn't in Goblet of Fire was the opening Quidditch World Cup.
Yes.
And if they would have had that in the movie, there was been no chance any movie would have been better, because I love Quidditch so much, and they give it to you and then they cut you off right at the knees. And I'm like, I would have loved to seen Crumb go head to head, how like true masters play Quidditch in the big arena. And it's such an exciting part of the book. And even every character was excited in the movie, and they just cut you off. They port key there. But then the rest of the movie just so fantastical. and you get to see how big the world is with all the other houses and all the schools coming together and having the tournament. But yeah, I think Goblet of Fire is my favorite, but having some of those key moments of the book not in really hurt.
I want to test your knowledge here, everybody. What was the result of the Quidditch World Cup?
This was in our trivia thing we went to.
Oh my god!
Didn't Crumb win?
Nope.
Didn't they win?
Nope.
No?
Nope. You don't know?
Oh my gosh!
I read it when I was 10.
know.
Yeah, I don't remember.
The Irish Harpies or something? Is that their
Are
name?
you looking for the score?
No, I don't know the score. No.
They won by 150
the
points.
Harpies?
Holyhead Harpies? No.
Oh, that's something.
They are, yeah. No, Ireland won and Crumb caught the snitch. Because
Ah.
I couldn't, for the life of me, I was like, wait, how does that work? But it's because it's worth 150 points. But
Didn't I just say
pretty
that Crumb caught the
broken.
snitch?
yeah, but Ireland won. So it's,
Oh.
yeah.
They
'Cause
did
So they
that
were ahead by
good.
so much.
Yeah, I think it's because, and I think in the book it was like Crumb was just bored.
Yes, I remember that too. Well, I was saying to Brian too, because he was talking about, he's like, oh, I wish there was so much more Quidditch in this. And I said, which might be false information that I'm spreading,
I
but
know this too.
remember, yes, that they slowly took away more and more Quidditch because over time, J.K. Rowling stopped liking Quidditch. She didn't like it as a game. She thought it was too complicated. And that's why it was less and less in the books and movies.
If
It was
us
a failure.
if us normies can figure out the game, it's not
It's so easy to figure out.
Yeah.
To shout out another one of Dayna and my favorite lines in the Goblet of Fire is when they're picking the dragons for me because the Chinese firebolt. Ooh.
I loved when you could see how the tiny dragon in
When
their
they
hand when
pull
they
them
picked it
out?
out. Yeah, it was so cool.
So cool.
That's why, like, as we're talking, I'm like, and as Brian and I watched those 3 random ones yesterday, I'm like, they're all bangers. They're all so good. They all have so many, like, we were watching, and even, like, we started with Chamber of Secrets, and even I was like, oh, Chamber of Secrets isn't my favorite, but we watched it. I was like, this
It was
movie
awesome.
is incredible. There's so many quotable lines in every single one. Like my favorite, Prisoner of Azkaban. I did my year waiting 12 years of it in Azkaban. Or like when Harry says like he was their friend. Dave and I say that all the time. He was their friend. So like that's why it's so hard to pick a favorite because they're all bangers.
I always do Chamber of Secrets and Order of the Phoenix. Not Order of the Phoenix. Goblet of Fire. Chamber of Secrets and Goblet of Fire. I do the Friends of Hagrid.
This is Aragon.
Friends of Hagrid. And he's like, they're hungry. He's like, Hagrid did not open the Chamber of Secrets. It's and
So
then
good.
Goblet of Fire I've seen so much. He's like, when Voldemort comes back to life, and he's like, I can touch you now. It's one of my favorite parts of the movie. And then when he's like, my boy, my son, my boy.
oh my god, Brian, that's so good.
And then and also in Order of the Phoenix, Adria forgot all about this. But we'll get to it when how dumb the adults are in these movies. But the head of the ministry, and at the beginning, he's like, he's not back. He's not alive. He can't be.
The whole
But then
time.
I said this line at the end where he comes back and sees Voldemort. He's back. He's back.
It's so good.
Another thing about Goblet of Fire in the book, the maze is very different, and I think it's more exciting in the book. But I understand why they did it that way because the rest of the movie was so insane. So they needed to keep it personal, and like the stakes were high between Cedric and Harry. Overall, I think Goblet of Fire is my favorite.
Ugh.
But obviously, the tones of the movies kind of shift from the first to the 8th movie. Do you guys think the shift in tone? Obviously, the books get more serious as it goes, but you think it ruined the enjoyment compared to how fun and youthful the first 2 were, compared to how sad and depressing 7 and 8 were? Even the color tones in general, do you think that kind of hurt, or do you just think they're all smashes?
I think like the first movie is so magical and it's such a, like it fills you, the music, everything fills you with all this joy. And even the first one is dark. Like we'll talk about it, but this school is always putting these kids in danger. So like there's always a sense of danger. But I think I love that it gets darker, even though yes, the last movie isn't as like upbeat and magical and fun. But I think we're kind of growing with Harry. And I found like, as we read the books, obviously we were like kind of target audience. We grew up. That's what I loved about the books, was like feeling like they were showing like the same things we were going through. I think it only makes it better, the darker tones and everything like that. Obviously you kind of miss some of the magic, but I still think they bring it through. So that's my thoughts.
I agree. I think it was good. I was here for it. I was every step of the way. I was ready for it. I remember like the first time somebody dies. I think it's when Sirius dies. Adria and I were reading them at the same time. And Adria was like, I remember she was sitting in our living room and she was further ahead than me. And I remember just walking into the living room and she's just crying. And I was like, don't tell me anything, you know? And, but still, even though that was there, I don't remember how old we were when that would happen, but I was ready for it. So I think that, I mean, I don't know if you would want to read like all 7 of them to like a person in grade 3, but maybe you could. I don't know.
I will say the Sirius death in the movie hit so hard yesterday. They hit you with like so much joy right before, because it's when they're fighting together. He's fighting with Harry against the Death Eaters. And he goes, "Good one, James." And you're like, oh my gosh, Harry looks at him and you're like, oh, this father figure he's never had. And almost immediately is when he gets killed afterwards. And it's just, I almost cried. It was devastating.
I forgot he doesn't show up in the 4th movie for Harry. And at the end, because he shows up when Harry sees him for the first time, again with the meeting of the Order. And at the end, I was like, he only gets half a movie with this man? How tragic. I understand why he's so angry with his life.
Yeah. I kind of agree with both of you. I think my level of enjoyment does not really falter with the seriousness of the progression in the movies. It loses its quotability for sure after pincers, but but like I think it's okay that it does that. I think things do need to change overall, and like it can't always just be like super happy and fun and goofy like we had at the beginning. Things have to change to actually make a big difference, and the slow change after like the 3rd movie, I think just makes it feel that much more real, because there are stakes involved. It's not just, it's not sunshine and rainbows. Yeah, quotability. I do miss that, because I think I quote my boy like weekly. Or when Harry puts on the invisibility cloak and he's like, my body's gone. And like, I love that. Like if there's a shower curtain anywhere, I'm like going right up to it. Yeah.
So I agree with all 3 of you to an extent. I'll go back to my previous point that I said, what hurts the movies the most as they go, obviously the serious tone is welcome because of how serious the stakes are for Harry. But I just think the color grading of the movies really hurt how magical the spells were, because everything looks so dull. Every spell they used looked exactly the same, and I think that really hurt it post Order of the Phoenix because of how extravagant Dumbledore and Voldemort's battle was, and even Harry's Expelliarmus was red in Goblet of Fire. I believe it's still red in the last movie, but everything else they do, they're just flicking their wands and everything is just a boring looking battle with white magic, where I think that's where they lose some of the effectiveness of the previous, let's say the first 2, or even the 4th movie had so much color and wow factor that the last, I think 3 movies really faltered because everything was blue and gray tones. And then the only thing they were using was Stupefy.
I liked 7. So Deathly Hallows Part 1 as like a very dark and gray movie because of what they had to do. They were literally searching like a dead end trail for the Horcruxes, and they were just like walking through fields and mountains, and they were, passing off the necklace Horcrux, and everybody was just super pissed and moody, and they got into fights. That made sense. I think if they did 8 and they color graded it to make it a little bit lighter, just to give us like that little bit of not hope, but like there's still like a lot of strong magic going on, that would have, I think, made it different for me. Or even after Voldemort dies, like change the colors, make it a little brighter. I don't think there's anything wrong with changing the lens that we view the movie from after a theme has shifted.
Now, I want to know, who is your favorite character and movie moment?
Oh, and movie moment. Okay, my favorite character, it's tough. I have like top like 10, but
But they're all crushes.
no. There are a lot of crushes. My favorite good character is Luna Lovegood. She's my favorite. I loved Hermione growing up, but Luna was like everything I wanted to be. She's so bubbly and cute and like everything herself. So as far as like characters that I wanted to become, Luna, as well as Hermione. She was such a good, like, positive. She made you want to be smart, be a good student. She was like, so I have Hermione over there too, but Luna's definitely my favorite. So that hand in hand goes with one of my other favorite good characters, which is Neville, who I absolutely love. I've got his wand back there too. Neville, I was dying. I wish I could even know more about his life. I think he just starts off as this soft, sweet boy, and he gets his redemption arc by the end where he gets to cut Nagini in half. It's one of my favorite scenes in that last movie. And I just think he's the sweetest boy. On the total opposite end of that, my other absolute favorite character is Draco, because he is so evil. Yes, he has so many good, like, quotable lines. He's got those brows that I can't do it, but he's got the brows. He's just so many good villains in Harry Potter. Him. And notable mention to Sirius as a favorite.
Excuse me, where's Gilderoy Lockhart?
Oh my gosh. Well, if we're talking villains, Brian is correct.
Can everybody hear me? Can everybody see me?
So, yes, if we're talking villains, I absolutely adore Gilderoy Lockhart. He's so funny. We just watched the second movie, and then I think one of the biggest crimes of things that are left out of the movie is, I think it's in either the second last one or the last one, they bring back Gilderoy Lockhart because they see him in the hospital because they're there for one of the Weasleys, whatever one gets attacked by.
It's Mr. Weasley.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So they're at the hospital, and then Harry like walks by a door or something, and Gilderoy Lockhart's there still trying to get his memory back, and he's like wonky, and like that I think is the biggest like thing that I would have loved to see in that movie, is to bring him back because he's just so funny and charming. He kills it top shelf in the second movie. So funny. So multiple people are my favorites.
I'm going to have to pivot here because Adria echoed obviously a lot of similar favorites to me. I guess I'm going to have to go with my boy Ron as my top. He was my first crush when Adria and I were kids. We played with our friend Amanda. She was Hermione because she had to be the main character. Adria was Harry. And little old me was left with Ron. And I love him. He's so funny. He's, always at Hermione's, Hermione's opposite. I would say between him and Sirius, I think, were probably my top favorite. I would have gone with Neville and Luna too, but as far as those people go, I think they're probably my faves. I was always excited, not just because I had a crush on him. When I was talking to my fiance about my favorite moment, my instinctual moment is not like the best wizarding moment. I was like, and this isn't my overall favorite, but I was like, oh my God, I love the Yule Ball.
Oh, yeah.
He made fun of me. Sorry. He's like, Dayna, that's the dumbest scene. Like, why would that be your favorite scene? I'm going to have to think on the favorite moment because I'm going to pivot from Adria's because I do love that. I'm going to have to think about my favorite scene a little more, but definitely Sirius. Like, how could you not? So lovable. He's been done wrong. He had, just thinking about him being in Azkaban, and he's there for his boy. He's a great friend to the end.
12
What more
years of
can
it.
I say? 12 years of it. Oh, honorable mention to Victor Crumb.
Grum. Grum.
Has one line of dialogue in the whole movie.
That's another thing they got rid of too. There was a lot more about Hermione writing him letters in the
Pen
books
pals,
too about their
yeah.
relationship.
So such good choices. I was actually thinking like Ron is up there for me because of how he changes as a character. He's like this goofy, helpless. I don't want to say he's like rude, but he's so aloof.
He's sarcastic.
Yeah,
He has those one-liners.
exactly. He calls somebody like a tosspot or pumpkin head. I'm like, these are my favorite lines ever. and the way he changes and like learns, especially in Deathly Hallows, where he like comes around and he's like, I need to be here. And Dumbledore knew that he was going to slip up at one point, and that's why he gave him the Deluminator to come back. He learned from that. He is actually like grown as a character, where I think, you know, Harry Potter is the vessel for us, right? Like there's not that much change for him. He's the constant, I've got to be the good guy, where Ron is like, he sucks and then he's good. You know, he has to learn to be at that level. He started here and he had all of these things to overcome. So I think he's one of my favorites. Also, Lupin is, I think, even more above him. He's number one for me. Yeah, I think Ron and Lupin for me are my two favorites. Favorite moment. This is so challenging for me because there's so many good moments. I don't know. Everything's good. I would really have to. I'll take a rain check on that one. I don't know.
I can come back to mine. I think I've kind of come to two of mine while Nick thinks on that. One, I think we talked enough about it. I don't need to repeat, but the fight at the in Order of the Phoenix with the prophecies, like that whole thing in the book was incredible. And I think they did a really good job in the movies too. I don't remember exactly what wasn't inaccurate or was, but I love that. And then I can't believe I didn't mention it, but my I think one of my top moments was realizing about Snape being on Harry's side. That's got to be a top one too.
Nice. I do got it now. I would say second place goes to the book Order of the Phoenix, when they're in the Department of Mysteries and they go through the different rooms that circle around that main area, and they go to like the love room, the birth room, the death room. Like I loved that because it's all the different types of magic that we don't see. It's never explicitly stated that these are things. So it just kind of builds the world up in this very mysterious way. It's still that, you know, soft magic element. We don't know anything about it, but it's just there for us to kind of experience. And number one is the Shrieking Shack scene in Prisoner of Azkaban. When they go through and you see Sirius for the first time, and it's him and Lupin, and they hug and everybody's confused, and then Snape comes in and they have this whole banter back and forth. It's like watching a stage play. The way it's shot is perfect, and they're so good at their jobs, and they sell it so much. I think that's my favorite scene. Yeah.
Oh, so good.
So growing up, I was definitely a hardcore rooter for every main character that ever existed. So Harry Potter, hands down, was my favorite character. But as I've aged, definitely Sirius Black is definitely up there. Lupin is also up there because of how cool and his role mentoring Harry in the third movie and what he brought to the table, because it also ties into my favorite moment of the whole franchise. But then Draco Malfoy kills me. Anytime he's on screen and he's always looking at Harry and he's always giving him these like, Potter, you wish, you scared? And he's always ragging on him. I definitely think Harry's still my number one, but Remus and Sirius Black are, I definitely think, tied for number two, just because watching Order of the Phoenix again, how loving Sirius Black is towards Harry and how his character changed from Prisoner of Azkaban, and how tormented he was from being in Azkaban, and like his look and thinking he was a villain, and how like the Animagus transformation into the dog, seeing him at the beginning of the movie and like this ominous what do they call them? What are they? The
Grim.
Grim?
Yeah.
The Grim.
The Grim.
And then the Grim. And then just the whole shrieking shack scene, and then him fighting, like going to fight Remus, but then holding him before he's turning into a werewolf. And he's like, it's in here, it's in your heart. And it's like, you can see his character development into what he actually is. But my favorite moment, hands down, is the Expecto Patronum scene when he, not even like seeing the stag across the way and like having that happen, but Daniel Radcliffe delivering any spell is iconic. But when he realizes his father is not showing up and he has to deliver one of the greatest spells of all time, in my opinion, and nothing can top it. The way he yells it and then it just erupts in this like wave of power, you can't touch it. Nothing can touch it.
That's actually how they describe it in the book.
Yeah.
It erupts from his wand. Yeah.
That's cool. But yeah, just from Remus going through the whole movie, teaching him how to do it and being by his side and being that father figure to that moment at the end where Harry has to become the wizard he's supposed to be, is you can't touch it. But aside from magic, my other favorite has to be, it's a simple thing, but in Order of the Phoenix, Dumbledore we'll get into later, but I don't understand Dumbledore's reasoning for just abandoning Harry at every turn.
So true.
But when we find, after Harry has his nightmare and he's realizing Voldemort is becoming part of him, and they're in Dumbledore's office and Dumbledore's going around telling
the paintings
that Mr. Weasley's been injured. And there's this point where the music kind of stops and it like zooms in on Harry and he like tweaks his neck and he yells, "Look at me." One of my favorite parts of Daniel Radcliffe's entire part of Harry Potter. Like, he's just like drenched in sweat, but like he's so tormented. And then the way he needs Dumbledore to be with him at all times, because like he doesn't know what's happening to him. And Dumbledore finally kind of clicks in. It's like, what have I done to this boy? Mm-hmm. But like the way Daniel Radcliffe delivers it, you can't touch it.
So good.
It's like anger and being scared all together. It's so good.
Which ties into the very end of the movie where Voldemort takes over Harry's body. And he's like, "You've lost, old man." And he's going through this whole thing. And Dumbledore's like, "Please fight it off." Like their relationship towards like the last 4 books, even from the first book, like it's so good. So that's what I have to say. Besides, obviously, Harry flying away from the dragon.
Yeah.
And I have to say, as much danger as these kids go through, the school is a place. It's known as a place to protect their students, but it does the total opposite in every single one of these movies.
Yep.
How do you think they handled the endangerment of the students?
Yes, the safest place on earth, I think, is what they say. I mean, every book we got a new, I mean, without any of the danger, there wouldn't be the excitement. But yes, definitely, like, if you're just one of these other students that aren't, like, helping save the day, man, you must be scared to go back to Hogwarts every year, because there is something, like, even in just the ones we watch, you got the Whomping Willow, you got the Dark Forest, the spiders, all these creatures. I mean,
the basilisk.
Like, clearly, there's a lot going on in Dumbledore. He's a very complex character, but it definitely seems like there is danger lurking around every corner, which adds to the fun. For sure.
Let's preface by Harry would rather go back to Hogwarts to deal with death than to stay with the Dursleys.
Yep.
I love the Dursleys too. Oh my gosh, they're so good.
36 last year. I had 37. Where's your mom, Potter? She dead?
She did.
I love what he also says, and that's at the beginning of Order of the Phoenix, I think, when he goes, Cedric, such a girlfriend.
Such a boyfriend.
Such a boy.
Where's your mom, Harry?
Hey, Dudley, did you go beat up a 10-year-old? This one deserved it. Oh.
That's a great one.
I mean, as well, like, talking about Prisoner of Azkaban, they bring all the Dementors to the school.
The ministry is absurd.
Yep.
And all these adults, I think the thing about the danger of the kids, the adults do nothing.
Yeah.
They have all these powers. We're like, no, they can handle it. Those 3 kids, they got it.
Yeah.
Don't worry about the Dementors attacking Harry at every turn.
Yeah. Or
or
the
that
troll
Sirius
in the
Black has
dungeon.
entered, you're just going to stand there and be like, oh, we can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
There's a troll in the dungeon. Thought you ought to know.
Yeah.
Troll in the dungeon.
I also want to bring up even, aside from like all of the monsters and the really scary things that show up at the school, Potion's class seems real dangerous. Especially for Seamus.
Oh,
well, that was Charms as well. He just blows up at every turn. So like the likelihood that happens to other kids, that's a pretty dangerous school. Imagine going to school and possibly getting blown up just from like, cooking class or like English class, and boom.
Not to mention the Triwizard Tournament.
Oh, exactly.
Did you put your name in the goblet of fire?
Dumbledore said calmly.
I find it funny that also in every dark arts, Defense Against the Dark Arts class, they never teach them anything. It's like Remus only really taught them Ridiculous and like took Harry aside to teach him how to protect himself against the Dementors. But then you don't get anything. Obviously, in the Goblet of Fire, you get Mad-Eye Moody teaching.
he teaches them the curse.
Cruciatus, or the curses.
Yes.
But like the other, they don't really teach them how to defend themselves. Hence why Harry has to do it all for him. Don't
slate Gilderoy, pesky pixie pestinomi.
Okay, he got nothing. He's got nothing going on. Which I don't understand how the teachers don't background check these wizards who teach them kids. Gilderoy can't do any spells.
There is actually also a point Brian and I noticed in number 2 in the Chamber of Secrets. Like at this point, near the end, they know that they have to go to the Chamber of Secrets, and they know Gilderoy Lockhart can't do these spells, and they're like, "Well, someone's got to go down." And Professor McGonagall goes, "Well, you're good at spells," and Brian and I were like, "Why would they send him?"
She just wanted a guilt-free way of killing him. It's like, it wasn't me.
And then the fact that another thing, having Mad-Eye Moody come in the 4th movie, but they don't realize with their magical prowess that it's Barty Crouch Jr. The tongue kills me every time. But like these teachers, they're so unsafe. Going from there, I want to talk about the final 2 books. Your opinion on, really the series as a whole, your opinion on the Deathly Hallows and how they handled that, and the Horcruxes and how that added an extra level of mystery and kind of intensity to Harry's journey throughout the books. Because for me, the scene in the Deathly Hallows, when you see the kind of 2D animated script,
so cool.
Yeah.
And like inking of the Deathly Hallows is also one of my favorite moments, just visually, of that movie, because I think the Deathly Hallows in general is so overpowered, and how Harry just for some reason never uses his invisibility cloak enough.
Yeah.
Later in the movie, he's like, you have the most powerful, one of the most powerful tools in your disposal.
I agree. That is the coolest. I remember reading the book and then thinking, how are they going to do this in the movie? And once it started, I remember watching it, I was like, this is even better than what I was imagining. This is so cool. The storytelling, oh my gosh, it's so freaking cool. The Horcruxes, I remember the part about the books is like, I remember being like on the edge of my seat, like not knowing what Snape's intentions were, not knowing like with the Horcruxes, like where is this even going to go? What's going to happen? Because obviously Dumbledore doesn't tell Harry anything, so he tells him a little bit, but like he gives him like little bits of information. So
Harry.
like
he's always saying Harry.
Yeah.
And then that's all he says, Harry.
So yeah, just like the putting the pieces together of the mystery of everything, and like the overall, especially in the last 2 books, like the sense of like danger is crazy. And then also like they're sending these kids to go, okay, you can figure it out how to do them. But like, oh my gosh, every step of the way of them finding out how to destroy the Horcruxes as well. I think one of the coolest moments, my favorite parts in the book, is when Ron comes back and destroys the locket and gets the sword. Because like at that point, I think Harry's like drowning in the lake or something like that, and then Ron saves him, but you don't know what's happening. So like, and he had been gone for so long, so that's probably my favorite. But yeah, oh my gosh, love the sense of mystery.
I love the Horcruxes as well. I think you probably, I mean, I know it would details like it wouldn't make sense, but I don't think you need the Deathly Hallows in it at all. Hot take. Well, not at all, but I remember reading like where we go with I know the Elder Wand and whatnot. It's very
What about
powerful,
the Resurrection Stone?
And the Resurrection Stone you need
It
to
brings Harry back to life.
I know that is critical for what happens, and I remember reading. Let's say, I don't know why I just like compared the two, right? Because the last book is called The Deathly Hallows. In my opinion, it could have been called like Harry Potter and the Horcruxes because
totally
they're so much more important. I guess not to Voldemort, so I guess it does make sense. But in my opinion, I remember getting to the end of the parts about the Deathly Hallows and I was like, oh, I thought they were going to be so much more important than the Horcruxes. Maybe also just because I thought that they were so much more interesting, finding all of the like doing the history, the figuring out more about Voldemort, the way they like trickle in all of that information was so interesting to me. And I think they do it a lot better in the books with you finding out like about his history and stuff, but they do okay in the movies too. There's only so much time. So I just think that they were so much more, felt like I was like leaving a little bit of wanting more about the Deathly Hallows rather than the Horcruxes.
I think
but in
that's
general
fair.
loved, but that's how I remember feeling reading it.
That's a really cool take on it. I never thought of that because I think I watched the movies and then I read the book, and I kind of, for me, the Hallows were exactly what they were. They were like a fairy tale, and the pieces, the pieces themselves didn't necessarily actually have to come from, death. It could have just been really powerful magical items that, as they were passed on generation to generation, they developed this mystique and this story behind them. And to some wizards, that made it more that made them more important than they ought to be. Because in the end, Voldemort was actually wrong about needing the Elder Wand. He didn't technically need it to succeed, but because he's so blinded by power, that was his like mistake in it all. Where Harry was able to get the other pieces, symbolically, technically become the Master of Death at the end, and then win. So, and for me, throw in magical items that are not integral to the plot and give me a story behind them. Check. I win. I'm sold. And 2, give me a hunt for things that are imperative to defeating the bad guy that are technically MacGuffins, but like we've heard about them throughout the entire series. Another check. Like the fact that like the diary, like the book, Tom Riddle's diary was a Horcrux. I'm like,
sweet.
No.
Yeah, when you find that out, it goes back to like, now I got to rewatch it because it's like,
yeah,
I can't believe that was one of them.
Exactly. Like putting all of that together, I think made the Horcruxes so cool to me. It's like we saw them so early on. And even the invisibility cloak being technically one of the Hallows, I thought was so cool because he's already had it.
Because we get it in the first book.
Exactly. We've had it this whole time. He's utilized it to some effect in the past, and he's, utilized it for good. But it's like, oh, it's been there the whole time. Like, oh, it's so cool. And same with the snitch. I don't know when Dumbledore actually put the Resurrection Stone in there, but it was at some point. It wasn't in the snitch the whole time.
It was just cool to.
It was cool that it was in there.
Yeah.
The moment it's like at the
I opened
first
at
at
the
the
close.
touch, and he opened at
That's
the
the
close.
coolest thing in the world. The
Yeah.
snitch callback with the kiss, like, or not the kiss, but the lips.
Him catching
It's
it,
like,
yeah.
I wasn't expecting that at all. I don't remember when I was reading it, but that's genius.
Yep.
Genius.
Exactly.
Because that was the last hollow we were looking for.
Yes.
And it was with Harry the whole time. Well, Dumbledore had it, but it was with Harry unknowingly.
Yeah, that whole time. Yeah, I thought it was super cool, but very cool take on it, Dayna. I never really thought of it them being like. I never anticipated the Hallows to be like this thing, when they combine and like become super hairy and kill Voldemort. I never thought of that. I think probably because I saw the movie first and I wasn't anticipating that. But that makes sense. I understand why you are of that opinion.
See, I think the Hollows, as cool as the story was, as much as Voldemort thought he needed all the Hollows to be the greatest, most powerful wizard, I think Harry needed them the most in order to defeat, because he needed all three basically to defeat Voldemort. Because he needed the Resurrection Stone, because he knew. How crazy was it when we realized Harry was a Horcrux?
Oh my gosh, what a reveal. Oh.
And so in order for Harry to die, to kill that part of Voldemort, to come back, and then in order to defeat Voldemort with the Elder Wand, to receive the Elder Wand and then destroy it. Also, I don't think he needed to really snap it off, like break it at the end of the movie. Like if he would have just died with it, then there would have been no further owner of the Elder Wand. Right? Do you think that kind of works instead of just... Because it's supposed to be the most powerful wand of all time. How can some kid just break it in half?
Well, but then someone could come and get it from him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess.
What they forgot about in the movie was that he repaired his old wand with the Elder Wand, which is the only wand that can do that, and then he breaks it. Which they should have put in there.
I knew there was something I couldn't remember from it.
Because he goes to see, in the book, he goes to see Dumbledore's photo, right?
Yes.
To repair his wand?
Yeah.
He speaks to Dumbledore one last time?
I think so. In the headmaster's office, yeah.
Yes. But yeah, I think the Deathly Hallows, as much as they were a kind of a subplot, were kind of necessary for Harry's journey in order to complete his task as beating Voldemort and, surviving, being the boy who lived.
Yeah, I think they're like for like symbolically, because
Well, it is a symbol, when you put them all together.
Yeah.
I think it would have been a cop-out if they would only introduced that in those movies and not had the previous leading up to those kind of us realizing, oh my God, he's had the cloak his whole life. We don't know where the Resurrection Stone is, but Dumbledore has had the Elder Wand forever.
Yeah, we've seen it the whole time in the movies.
Yeah.
Now, this might be fully understood. I don't know if it's actually real or right. He doesn't need he doesn't use the Resurrection Stone to come back to life, because it doesn't do that. He used it to accept dying, right? Because he sees his family and he's like, I'm super scared. Is it gonna hurt? And then Sirius is like, quicker than falling asleep, whatever. Oh. And then he's like, sorry, I said whatever at the end.
No, you're going to make me cry.
Yeah. And then he drops it because he's like, okay, now I'm really ready. I saw everybody. I've accepted it fully now. Because he accepted it before when he was walking to the forest. He saw his family and his loved ones, and then he accepts it's okay to die because this is the right thing to do. This is what I have to do. And then that choice in King's Cross Purgatory area was his chance to come back and finish things. Because
I think you're right.
Yeah, because he didn't have to die. Like
But do you think it wasn't really his choice due to the fact that I think Voldemort didn't see the flaw in his plan, because killing Harry only kills the Horcrux?
Right, which is why Harry didn't die.
Yeah.
Well, because what is the prophecy like?
None shall
live while the other
survives.
Survives.
Yeah. So like one actually has to die, and technically they both like the Horcrux in Harry died, but Harry didn't die, so Voldemort didn't die. At that point, also the blood bond broke. No. Yes, that's right. So at that same time, two things happened. I think the blood bond broke, and the Horcrux died. So then now Voldemort technically could have killed Harry, but he didn't because Neville chopped off the snake's head.
Yeah.
But speaking of death, how did you, as a viewer and a reader, and how do you think the movies handle the death of main characters such as Dumbledore, Sirius Black, Cedric Diggory, Dobby, and Snape?
Oh my gosh. Talk about like, so for example, Dana and I were reading The Deathly Hallows at the exact same time. We would read
We
them.
both had a coffee.
We both had a copy. Usually we would read them in the summer and they would come out like a little bit before our vacation. And that was what Dana and I would spend our vacation reading. And we were reading The Deathly Hallows at the very same time. And for once, Dana finished before me. And I just remember her closing the book and just sniffling. and that's just the book overall. But in general, like the deaths, every single one of them, devastating. Serious. I would say one of the ones that hit me surprisingly hard was when Hedwig dies. Obviously Dobby is like, oh my gosh. And I think it's like what a part to in the movies too when he dies to split it
Shell
up.
Cottage.
Oh my gosh, the Shell Cottage. I remember just being like so not prepared to watch it in the theaters because I remember just having already gone through that in the book. I was like, I'm gonna be obliterated by this moment. And I just think it is so good to, I think it's great to have death in books for kids, even though that sounds bad. For example, the other book that Dana and I were reading at the same time, A Series of Unfortunate Events. There's so much death in those books as well. Same with Harry Potter. And I just think it teaches you such good lessons as a kid, like how to deal with death and like to overcome it. And I think it's like such a good example of going through like a little microcosm of like you don't actually know these people but you kind of feel like you do. So I think it's such a good introduction for kids into death, as bad as that sounds. But like, yeah, definitely it puts you through it. Like I was just full of tears on my page all the time.
I'm in the same boat as Adria, obviously. I think they each hit so hard. I think I don't really remember reading about Cedric dying, but I think the movie, chef's kiss for it. Like when you know, the like quick callousness that Voldemort, like you just, I feel like it really cements, if you didn't already know, like how much he cares, how little he cares about anybody that's not important to him, their lives. He just throws them, you know, kill the spare.
Kill the spam.
The realization of Cedric's dad is just like, it's crushing. The sound of his voice, my boy. Oh my god.
That's my son.
But I agree. Hedwig's hit really hard. I think even Mad Eyes is sad because he during that whole awesome scene when they're leaving.
Daughters.
Oh
Yeah.
And need I say it for obvious reasons? Is it Fred? Fred or George. That George. George. Honestly, I read that, and obviously being a twin, I was like, no.
I can't believe I forgot it. Yeah, agreed. The
All the
twin
deaths, that was the most devastating for me. I remember like being ripped apart.
Yep. Sorry, Fred died. George lost an ear. My bad.
That's it.
Did he die in the movie?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I always thought they kind of glossed over that and that he was actually still alive.
I think it's in like like when they're showing all the other people that die in the battle for Hogwarts, because like that's also where Tonks and Lupin die too. Another devastating moment.
Speaking, I don't understand. Like, so this is a thing movies do a lot, but when something tragic happens, they tend to only have music playing and then they cut out the actors' voices. So when Sirius dies, I think it would have been nice to have a little hint of Harry's agony instead of having all the actors mute and just having the overall soundtrack. Because the same thing happens with Dumbledore. When he falls over the thing, everything's all silent. I think it would have been nice to just have a little bit of that, because Harry was given his performance and they just kind of shut it down. It's like he's had that before in other movies, so you know he's going to deliver. So I think just hearing his voice a little bit would have added to the tragic and obviously how quick it was.
Yeah.
He finally got somebody, now he's gone within a matter of seconds in what his mind was going through. So I only think those kind of things in movies kind of bother me. But all the other deaths, they did death really well in all these movies.
Yeah, I agree. And I liked how quick it was. in most circumstances. In that moment, I think as soon as it's done, they prolong the reaction, and I think that's what you're getting at, Brian. It's like it kind of, the music stops, you just hear, you hear some music, but you don't hear any words. I feel like that's overdone now, and I would like the quickness of it. Like even when Hedwig died, like I thought that was probably one of the best ones because it was like a flash of green, Hedwig falls, Harry's like Hedwig, and that's it. Like you're like, what the heck just happened?
Yeah.
Same with Cedric. It was like kill a spare, boom, done. Like that was it. And Harry's just like, holy
Yeah.
like that's how it. I think that is a good portrayal because it's confusing. You're distressed. I don't know. There's so much going on. It shouldn't be this like long drawn out thing for the audience to be like, oh, that's so sad. Like we know it's sad. We got up, but like if you let us process it later, it's going to hit harder. I think because we're not dumb.
I don't know. I think Sirius's death was done perfectly. Besides me wanting to hear a little bit of Harry's agony, because when he gets hit. And then Harry realizes what happened. He realizes that he slowly fades into the gates.
Yeah.
Traumatizing.
Yeah.
When he goes into that mirror, I still had in my head the whole time I read these books, I was like, maybe he'll come back. Because even though there was the curse, there was like so much mystery around that mirror. I was like, oh my God, maybe he'll come back. And the same with like, I think Dumbledore too, as I was reading, I don't know why, I was like, oh, maybe he's not really dead.
Speaking of Dumbledore, how do you guys think his treatment of Harry, or what do you think of his treatment of Harry in terms of just abandoning him at his lowest and kind of never really giving Harry what he needs in terms of information? Because everybody doesn't give Harry anything, I feel. And Dumbledore, besides the first two movies, kind of like giving them hints here and there, even in the third one, he's only given them hints. He's never really helping Harry when he really needs it. Do you feel Dumbledore kind of let Harry down?
I think it's tough because at the same time you are like, oh my gosh, Harry, just tell him these things. Like, and then he's obviously going to be like, Voldemort's after him. You got to like give him more information, even though he is a kid. But at the same time, you can kind of see the logic. Like Harry is just like this like 11-year-old boy. Are you going to be like, okay, be prepared. Like someone's going to be hunting you down your whole life. But at the same time, I do love it because he is such a flawed character. He is this like person that everybody looks up to, and you are so devastated when he dies. But it is so complicated because you're like, could this have been avoided? Like a lot of these troubles. So it's so tough because at the same time, he feels so magical and like so powerful. You're like in awe, but he is such a real person, even though everybody looks up to him and everything. So it's so tough because yes, they are actively putting Harry in danger in so many situations. So it's like, I don't know. It's a complicated character for sure.
I think Adria's being too nice. Fuck Dumbledore. He uses Harry. I guess there's no one else you could have used Harry. Like you couldn't have done it with somebody else, but I remember thinking after learning how he knew so much, and I agree, he never gives Harry enough information, especially about the Horcruxes, especially when he's been wearing the ring. Like he had so much more information he could have given him, and that would have just like solved so many things. Or like, obviously, like Harry's also going through it and realizing this, but I think when we as the audience learn about that, I'm like, over it. I rethought everything I thought about Dumbledore, and I've always thought that ever since I learned that, I was done with Dumbledore and his actions. But, hearing Adria saying that he's just a flawed person and he's not perfect, I think I might have understood his character a little bit, but my emotions were like, no, done with him.
But even after Order of the Phoenix, the moment where I love the most when Harry yells at him and say, look at me. At the end of the movie, Dumbledore says, I apologize. I thought stepping away and distancing myself from you was the smart play. Okay, what about the other 3 books after that. You give him very little after that. So where's your reasoning behind leaving him away and then still, when they're going to do stuff, say to find one of the Horcruxes, Harry still doesn't know what's happening.
No, he's no
He's
idea.
not prepared at all.
Dayna, I was like so surprised at what you just said. But
Sorry, you can believe that.
But I get both of those perspectives. Like, I think what Dumbledore could have done, hindsight 2020, but if he knew Harry better as a person, he would have been able to trust him. I think what this kind of all encompasses is a very wise, experienced adult not trusting what a teenager is going to do with their life. He's got to grow up and figure it out on his own, or else it's not going to work. But at the same time, if you get to know him and know he's a trustworthy, reliable, dependable character, all of this would not have happened. And I think, Adria, he is a really good flawed character. Because, Brian, you said he's like, I'm sorry, I totally messed up there. But then he just does the same thing again. I'm like, well, shame on you.
Because he could have stepped in at any point in the first 4 books.
Yeah.
Like,
and he had
basilisk.
those. Yeah, and he had
You
those.
can't tell me he couldn't have got Harry out of the contract.
Exactly. And
for the Triwizard Tournament?
Yeah.
Or even leaving him to go fight Voldemort himself.
Yeah. Maybe
Like giving him the philosopher's, like having the stone, showing him when he sees the mirror.
Yeah.
And then going into fighting with the chess and fighting Voldemort. It's like Dumbledore couldn't have been anywhere in those 4 movies.
You know what would have been super cool if Dumbledore was waiting at the end of the maze and they were going to touch the Triwizard Cup together. And then, you would have had a safeguard against anything because, bad stuff is happening all year. Maybe
all the time.
have some security and Dumbledore doesn't do the legwork. And I think that's why, Dayna, you're so mad at him. Mm-hmm. He lets other people do it because he thinks he's so busy. And he's a busy guy. But
he's busy doing
busy.
What?
Right. He's doing the investigative journaling, and he could get McGonagall to do the other stuff or Snape to do the other stuff because he is obligated to do what Dumbledore says. But he's like, no, I'm gonna go look for the ring and the whatever.
On his own.
Yeah. It hurt my hand.
And I think that there's speaking of Snape, there's a scene I think specifically that caused me this anger. And I think it's the one part where they go back into Snape. I think they're looking at either Dumbledore's or Snape's memories, and Harry sees the conversation that Snape and Dumbledore have. And I think Snape realizes that Dumbledore knew that Harry was going to die the whole time. And I think that's the betrayal. And I'm full on Severus Snape's side in that moment of betrayal. And I think that's what really nailed the coffin for me on Dumbledore.
Wow. You are 100% convincing me. I'm all of you. I'm like, oh my God. Yeah. Because it just seems like Snape, even though he hates Harry, he has done more for him almost.
Yeah.
Well, from the point in Order of the Phoenix when he's training him to deal with torture of the mind, like Voldemort invading him, I feel like at that point he's kind of distanced the first 4, but from the 5th book on, he's totally playing that he is a villain, but he cares about Harry so much because of Lily.
I feel like what the author was trying to do is get Dumbledore on the Gandalf level of very, very passive wizard, just helping out in the background. But he's such an important character, and the things he gives to Harry are just be there, or tell him. And I think that's where it kind of it creates that big divide. With Gandalf, it's Gandalf is literally saving the world over there and getting the horse people to come fight the war over here. He's doing a lot. But Dumbledore's case, he's not doing that much in the grand scheme.
I think it's more like the Eagles. Where if Dumbledore would have given more information, these situations would have been a lot easier.
Exactly.
They wouldn't have to walk miles and miles and miles.
Exactly. Oh, that was a great take on both of from both of you. I love that.
Do you see Voldemort as Voldemort? Do you see Dumbledore as a villain at any point?
I don't know about villain, but I definitely think the whole series, Harry is just looking for like parental figures, and he is just turned away by death or like by lack of emotional availability, and the only person who actually gives him it is Hagrid. So that's my thoughts. I think Dumbledore obviously is back and forth, but I wouldn't say villain. No.
Yeah, not quite villain, but I think we know where I stand.
Because there was a point we were watching the movie Horde of the Phoenix, and Adria was like, "Man, Harry is such a D in this movie," and I was like, "Well, you have to look at what this dude has been through. He's being totally taken over control by Voldemort on the inside. Everybody he loves dies. He has no family. Every time he leaves the school, he gets tortured and abused by his family at home." He thinks his friends don't write to him. He is in charge of saving everybody. Obviously, he would be kind of flawed.
Don't forget the hormones.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Because he's 15.
Because Ron gets some serious hormones in the first book, in the 7th
He
book.
does.
Yeah.
At that point, I was like, I don't even care about Ron.
Yeah.
Get out of here. But going towards villains, how do you think the books and movies handled Harry Potter's villains? Because I think Harry Potter is only as successful as the villains.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so many good villains. It's so hard to even to pick a favorite. I mean, obviously Voldemort is like the overarching villain of the story, but then there's like so many notable mentions. Like I just remembered Rita Skeeter, who is the reporter, and she ends up writing all the bad stuff about Harry, about Dumbledore, spreading kind of misinformation and just to only promote herself and stuff. And she ends up just becoming like so many intricate villains, I think. And I think just having a new villain every book just to overcome is such a good obstacle and tool for like a book. But it's so interesting because all of them are so different from, even I would consider like Gilderoy Lockhart a villain. Mm-hmm. And of course Umbridge is like one of the most sickly sweet villains that they introduce, and so unique. I think they are all so different from each other and so creative in ways of their, in some cases, torture. But yeah, Snape obviously is someone who I remember from reading the books. I was like, whose side is this guy on? Like, you never know. And I was always like, even though it's kind of like, you kind of know they're going to throw something at you, even though you're like, oh, this guy. So it's so tough. It's so tough but I love all of the villains.
Yeah, the villains, they do so good. I think maybe part of the reason why they're so good are like, you got your in-betweeners, but the people that are evil are so evil. Mm-hmm. Like Bellatrix killing Sirius, and then the laughter, like you just hate her. Like, you know, there's no redeeming qualities there.
I killed Sirius Black. I killed Sirius Black.
And like, how much do you hate her for that? And that is like such a high level. And all of the Death Eaters too. I think they talk about, I forget their names, but the ones that kill Neville's parents with the
Bellatrix.
It is Bellatrix?
Yeah, she tortured
Oh, you're
them.
right. You're right. Mm-hmm. I was thinking about not Crabbe and Goyle, the other two like main ones, but yes, McNabb. And even what's the werewolf's?
Is that Fenrir Greyback? Is that his name?
No, that's the good guy, isn't it? Or no, is that the bad guy?
That's the bad guy.
Yeah, him. I think he might be the one that kills George. So anyways, he kills somebody, and he's even evil. He's, you know, when the Snatchers, isn't that what he called them?
He's the one that turned Lupin into a werewolf, I think.
That's it. Yeah. That's it.
He attacks one of the brothers at the wedding in the book or something.
Yes.
One of the brothers.
Yeah. 10 out of 10 on the villains.
I agree. I if you could create a villain that just the sight of her makes people physically upset. I'm talking about Umbridge, obviously. You've done a good job.
Oh, I knew.
Yeah, like you've won, and I think even from the books, you're like, this is so infuriatingly evil, and you hate them so much that, like, worse than Voldemort, easily, hands down. But yeah, 10 out of 10 for the villains in this series.
Guys, we're forgetting about our main man, Lucius Malfoy.
Oh, honestly, we watched Chamber of Secrets, and every line of him is gold in that movie.
Can we talk about how they hint at Avada Kedavra at the end of that book?
Yeah.
When he's going to kill Harry?
We watched it, and Harry gives Dobby the sock, and he starts to say Avada, and I was like, he's going to kill Harry.
He's like, you shall not harm Harry Potter. And then I think Draco is also, he's not a villain, but he's tormented in a way he wants to be like snarky evil like he's just a bully.
Yeah.
But then by the end, he's just so twisted because he doesn't want to be this evil, but he just likes being bad. But then when him and Harry have the duel in the bathroom,
Sectum Sempra.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, that's one of my favorite scenes. I think that's one thing, like, I was always rooting for Draco my whole life. I in my head, I mean, I have you heard of Dramony, the combo of Draco and Hermione? This is my dream goal relationship when reading those books. But since I was so in love with him. But that's my one, I think, thing I would have loved to see. Like, obviously, he has a little bit of a redemption in the epilogue, but I would have loved to see him go on to Harry's side in the final battle. That's my one.
Yeah.
Because that is kind of cringy when Voldemort kind of like hugs Draco.
It's the best.
So good.
And like his mom just takes him away. Yeah, that
she's
would have
a
been
great
cool.
character, too.
But then you wouldn't have Neville's kind of heroic moment if Draco couldn't change sides.
Oh, I have one little villain thing. I rewatched the first one, and I would say the bottom of the villains would be Voldemort on the back of Quirrell's head. And maybe that's just the way that they did it.
Professor Quirrell.
You know when he goes, he puts his hands on his face. It was just a little bit funny.
Why does that happen?
Because I think it's because he's too, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's because Voldemort is in such a weak state. Because, like, before Quirrell takes off his turban, he goes, "But Master, you're too weak, or you're not strong enough, or something." Yep. And then Harry touches his hand, and his hand starts to crumble.
Yep.
And then he's like, "Oh!" And then he touches his face. I think that's why.
I think it's the protective from his mom, right? That's the reason why he can't touch her.
Yeah.
Kill him.
Oh, one more villain I just wanted to mention was the Dursleys overall. I think they're so good. And just like, I mean, you're hit with that like right away. I mean, obviously living in the cupboard and just like they hate Harry so much. I also really like in the books, it goes more into detail about Petunia and her relationship with Harry's mom and like the kind of the jealousy and like that turns to anger and like shunning about the magical community and everything. So yeah, the Dursleys overall, Dudley obviously particularly great.
What do you think is your opinion on the finale? Do you think it was a satisfying finale in terms of the book and then also in terms of the final movie?
Oh my gosh, a tearjerker. What's the I don't know if it's the final words of the book where they say like Hogwarts is a place you can always come home to. I forget what the line is, but I remember reading the book, obviously so emotional, but watching the movie, I remember feeling like, wow, this is really over, because at the time there was no notion about Fantastic Beasts or anything like that. And I just remember feeling so many emotions, and it did feel complete to me at the time. But then jump to when Fantastic Beasts came out. There is a scene in the second one where you first see Hogwarts again. And I remember just feeling this overwhelming, like I think I cried in the theater because it was like, oh yeah, you can go back to the story time and time again. And it felt like you were going home again. And I just cried in the theater.
Because you also didn't think you'd see it.
we never thought I would see it again. We never thought I'd feel like those same, like, and the little tune is playing in the background. So like it did feel pretty devastating at the end, but it felt very complete to me.
Yeah, I think I'm with Adria. There's something about Hogwarts specifically that you're like, oh, it's even bigger than, this is, I guess, more to do with the epilogue than anything with the kids going back to school. And it's more like that Hogwarts is bigger than Harry's story. It's not just about their storyline, you know, and it's always like, you know, the misunderstood kid, or if you're feeling like a little other, the welcoming. I totally echo Adria's sentiments about that. We went to the Warner Brothers Studios tour, and there's a moment at the end where you get to walk into this room that's like a miniature version to scale of what Hogwarts would be like. They have like the beautiful little music playing at like the right moment. And I remember we walked in and Adrian and I just bawled. We just started crying, and it was so beautiful. And just to echo what Adrian said, just like going home.
Yeah, it was the to scale model that they used for the exterior shots of the movie. It was so cool. This room that's like as big as our house. It was crazy.
Same exact feeling as the both of you. The ending was so satisfying, and Hogwarts, definitely has that home feeling. And even though I've seen the movies dozens of times and have been reading the books over and over again, I can still go back to them and feel that same way, albeit a little bit different or having like a new lens growing up. But it always feels good, or it's always exactly what you need at that time. I don't think you're going to go back to it at a time where you don't feel like you need it or you don't want it. And that's why it's so powerful, I think, for all of us, with how it started and how it ended. And I think we'll get into it in a minute about the expanded universe. But I think for me, the ending of the Harry Potter movies was exactly what I needed at that time, and still do.
I agree to an extent. Here's my hot take. I love everything up all the way through when Harry has a child and he sends him off. That's amazing. I don't know if this is a hot take or not, but I did not enjoy Harry and Voldemort's final duel.
Oh, in the movie.
Okay. The whole thing up when they're in the tower, the clock tower, and they're just talking back and forth. But the whole time, I don't know why they decided to make this happen, but they're just like floating around together in this like smoke, and like they're pulling each other's faces. The one part was cool when they kind of combine the two heads, but like this is what you decided to make their final duel look like, and then having on the bridge going head to head with their usual spell they did in the fourth movie. But then it was just like a slow-mo of like Voldemort, like his face, and like Harry catching the wand and like him disintegrating into nothing. It was so unsatisfying as Harry and Voldemort's first duel in the fourth movie, and as Dumbledore and Voldemort's duel in the fifth movie, that this is what you gave Harry and Voldemort as their final hoorah, was them floating around in this dust, ending up on the bridge and just doing the same thing they did before. They're connecting spells because that's the only two spells they know how to use. and then it's all slow-mo. And then Harry breaks the wand, and then that's the end of that. I felt like everything up to that point was so intense and needed to happen that their final duel was just like, okay, well, obviously he's going to win. Yeah. That there was no like back and forth between like trying different spells or like magic. It didn't seem like there was a lot of magic happening for the two strongest wizards currently existing when they're just floating around. And then their same duel happened in the fourth movie, which was more impressive to look at. I don't know. I just felt like it wasn't as big as it should have been.
I get you. I get what you mean. Like the climax of the movie is not as spectacular as what we've already experienced. So it's almost like a letdown.
Because it's like you're weakening Voldemort every time you kill a Horcrux.
Yeah.
So by the time you go to fight him, he's pretty much nothing. So that's kind of, I don't know. The duel wasn't it for me.
That's fair. I think the reason I liked the end and it was so like melancholy and he just like breaks the wand and throws it off the bridge. I was like, Yeah, man, like that's what happens in big adventures. Like it's just done. And you just stand there looking at like the rubble and you're like, oh, okay, time to be normal humans again. Which doesn't, it doesn't fit too well for like the idea of a major story. But that's, I think, the most real part of that movie. It's like real life, like back to normal, time to finish school. So I can do my desk job now as the chosen one. But I
also don't think those statues she summoned,
McGonagall
summons were anything special.
No, they should have been cooler.
They didn't do anything.
No.
But the spell's really impressive.
When witches and wizards can
Yeah.
fly around and like the Death Eaters can like turn smoke at any point, and what's the point of them having all line up in front of the bridge to protect the castle?
They should have been like ninjas.
Wizard ninjas.
with big spears. That would have been cool as heck.
I think in the book, because I agree with you, Brian, I actually think that's really true. There's like not enough magic, I think. You're right, in the end. And I know I don't remember a ton about that part of the book, but I do remember there was a lot more. We touched on it with Hagrid and the other giants, and they were supposed to be really involved. And I think Grop, is he in the movie, in the last movie?
The centaurs are supposed to be there as well.
Yeah. Oh, the centaurs. They didn't use the centaurs enough. They're so cool. So I agree with you there.
So before my final question, I want to shoot some rapid fire. A couple rapid fire. Quick answers. Who is your Patronus animal? And if you've already done the test, that's okay. But what animal would you want your Patronus to be?
I choose my favorite animal's an elephant. That'd be a really big charm, but it's elephant.
I'm going with the seal, which I think is Hermione's, my fave. Is that Hermione's?
It's an otter.
That's an otter.
Otters.
Yeah.
But I'd go with the seal. Close enough.
Very nice. Mine was initially going to be a black lab, but now that I have a wiener dog, it's 100% a wiener dog.
That's cute. I'm going the total opposite end of the spectrum on that, Nick, and I'm picking a wolf.
Nice. Nice. It's what he
I
used
just
to
always
be.
love wolves.
Yeah.
What's that?
It's what Elvis used to be.
A wolf?
Yeah.
His
Before
past
reading
life?
it. Yeah.
Now, going into Hogwarts, you're allowed to take an animal with you. So, i.e., Harry has his owl, Ron has his rat, Neville has his frog. What animal would you bring to Hogwarts?
I want to say bunny.
Ooh. I'm going to go with cat. That'd be it's my favorite animal, and I'm following up. It's a magical-ish. A black cat would be cool.
Trevor reincarnated. The frog. 100%. Yeah.
I'm picking an owl. Just because it's
Owl's
generic, but I love
classic.
the way the owls look in the movies.
Classic main character answer.
It is. It's classic. I'm picking Hedwig, just to be real. Your favorite magical object?
Toss up between Hermione's never-ending bag and the time turner.
Ooh, I was going to say the time turner. Let's go with Snape's journal. With the spell, or the Half-Blood Prince's
His
journal.
spell book.
Yeah.
Spell book.
The vanishing cabinet.
Ooh.
Instant teleportation.
That's cool.
I'm going to say the firebolt
Nice.
broom,
Oh,
only because it's my dream to fly on a broom. And that was my only thing I wanted to do in Hogwarts Legacy. I've yet to get it, but it'll be happening at some point. And the last part of my rapid fire is, what is your favorite fantastical beast?
I think it is a pygmy puff, which is mostly talked about in the book, but I really wanted one.
I'm going to go with the centaur because we were just talking about them and they're freaking cool.
Are we talking expanded universe or just in the Harry Potter movies?
Any fantastical beast that happens in the Harry Potter universe, or Fantastic Beasts, or the books, or anything.
Nifflers.
Anything that takes place in the Harry Potter universe.
Yeah.
Nifflers.
They're so cute. I love them.
I also have to go generic on this one, and it's the Chinese firebolt.
The Chinese fire.
Very cool.
I love dragons so much.
Yep.
But to the last question I want to get into are your thoughts on how they handled the movies of Fantastic Beasts, and your thoughts on how they're somehow going to reboot the entire franchise as a TV show.
Oh my gosh. Well, I was so excited for the Fantastic Beasts movies. I love especially the second one.
Which I'll take, some people hate that movie.
I know.
Which
I absolutely love the second one. I don't love the first one, but I mean, I like the first one, but I love the second one. I thought it felt so magical. I love so many things about it. I love the mixtures of the humans and everything. But I didn't really like the third one.
The third one, The Secrets of Dumbledore, sucked.
Really disappointing because I thought the second one set up a lot. Dana, I don't know if you've seen it yet. So
I've seen it.
So I absolutely, but I love number 2. I have no idea what they're going to do with the story. I think they had a lot of other options. They don't have to do the actual Harry story. They have a lot of other characters that I think that would have been interesting as a story, like young James and all of his friends growing up. That would be something I would have loved to see it as a show rather than showing the same story.
I wasn't thrilled to hear about the show, but as I said to my fiance yesterday, there's no chance I'm not watching it.
That's fair.
But so I would love to see some things that they didn't get to do in the movie format, some more details on some other things, maybe the spew stuff, but I would also love other characters really delving into that. So I'm going to watch it, but we'll see. TBD.
Yep. Agreed. Regarding the show, good luck. I will be there on opening night. I will watch it and we'll see what happens. Fantastic Beasts, I didn't like them at all. Like 0%. I wish. So I love Eddie Redmayne as Newt. Mm-hmm. I really like Jude Law as Dumbledore. I like most of the characters. I feel like the story was so messy. It just took me out of it. I love the magic. You're right, Adria, with the magic in the second movie, like amazing. But that didn't help me at all, unfortunately. But it's like, you know what? It's okay. If other people enjoy it, that's all I care about. I wish I could have enjoyed it as much as other people do.
Yeah, I think the third one had so much potential and it just dropped the ball so hard. There's so much they could have done with it, and it was just underwhelming compared to how much I loved the second movie. Even though everyone seems to hate the second movie, I thought there was a lot of cool elements they added to it, as well as the magic. The first movie, I didn't like whatsoever. I just thought I think it's because it was so different. I'm like, I don't like, Newt grew on me as the movies went, but I didn't like Newt at all in the first movie, and kind of the beasts, I didn't really get it because that wasn't my thing beforehand. But in terms of the rebooted show, how are you ever going to replace the cast?
Yeah.
They cast it perfectly.
Tough.
How are you going to recast Harry Potter, Hermione, and Ron? It's not going to happen. I think they should have done a whole different route instead of redoing the books. There's so much extra lore. They could have done, I was talking to Adria about this the other day. They could have done the origin of Hogwarts with Godric Gryffindor, Salazar Slytherin.
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
Creating this Chamber of Secrets. That would have been
Mm-hmm.
so cool to see. Building the castle, that first whole year of them building
That'd
the
be
school.
really cool.
Or even, and then they could have done a season 2 side, not even season 2 of the origins of Hogwarts. I would have loved to see a whole Voldemort story. Him splitting his Horcruxes like more in depth and in detail. They don't have to do Harry Potter again. They've already done it, and you can't touch it, even though you're going to get into more depth, as they say, because you have longer time frames in TV show format. But you can't redo what you've already done, and no one's going to come out of it saying, "Oh, it was so much better." They could have added more things in towards the book so people who like the books could appreciate them more, but you can't take away the iconicness. This new cast will not be the original cast.
Yeah.
So that's my final thought on that.
But overall, just the best movie, best book series, everything we needed as kids. And I'm so happy that it's part of our lives.
Me too. Wouldn't trade it for anything.
Yep.
Yeah, I definitely agree with both of you. Like, you can't replace the feeling that Harry Potter gives you. And every time the music comes on, it brings you back to that time when you first read the book or saw the movie, or even like pretended to be the characters. Like one of my best friends, Justin, who lived across the street. Whenever we saw the movies, we would easily, like from the second movie in the dueling, when Draco and Harry were dueling, we would do that constantly, jumping on each other's couches, pretending we had wands, because wands weren't out at the time and we didn't have any. So we would just be throwing spells. No one knew who would win the duel because no one wanted to lose. But we would constantly be jumping around, running through the house, pretending we had wands and doing all these spells. one of my favorite spells is Rick Decempra.
Yep.
Because it came out of nowhere, and then they never kind of went back to it, but it's just something
Never used it again.
They never used it again, but between Harry and Malfoy, I just think it was such a cool moment, them dueling each other. So this has been a great conversation about magic, the world of Hogwarts, and Harry Potter in general. And I want to thank Adria and Dayna for hopping on today to show their love for the franchise we all grew up on.
Thanks so much. It was so much fun.
I could talk about Harry Potter for another 2 hours and I'd be good.
I feel like we all could do that as well. But this has been 2 Hours on a Sunday. I'm Brian.
And I'm Nick.
And we'll catch you guys later.